The richest man in the valley laughed at the quiet young woman in front of the entire town. But weeks later, someone left a terrifying warning at her door. Stay away from the Duke, or the next warning won't be so gentle. When a mysterious rider fled into the canyon, the Duke and the very woman he once humiliated raced after him. And what they discovered there changed both of their lives forever. Who was really behind the threats, and how did the woman everyone mocked become the Duke's bride? Watch the full story till the end, and don't forget to subscribe to our page. Before we start the story, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is right now? The town of Willow Creek never forgot the day Duke laughed at the young woman. It happened outside the old trading post on a bright spring morning. The dusty street was crowded with ranchers, merchants, and travelers. Horses stood tied to wooden rails, while wagons rolled slowly through town. The Duke stood proudly on the porch of the trading post. He was the richest ranch owner in the valley. His land stretched farther than anyone could see. Hundreds of cattle carried his brand, and almost everyone respected or feared him. As a young woman walked past carrying a basket filled with flour and fresh eggs, the Duke smiled with pride rather than kindness. "She is far too stubborn for any man," he said loudly. "Whoever marries her will spend his whole life arguing with the wind." Several people laughed immediately. No one wanted to disagree with the Duke. The young woman stopped for only a second. She looked at him with calm eyes, adjusted the basket in her hands, and quietly continued walking without saying a single word. That simple silence surprised more people than any angry reply could have. Nobody standing there imagined that before the next spring had fully arrived, that same woman would be wearing the Duke's wedding ring. The valley was beautiful, but unforgiving. Rolling green hills stretched toward distant mountains. Small farms stood beside wide ranches. Every family worked from sunrise until sunset because survival depended on hard work. Winters were cold, summers were dry, and every harvest mattered. The Duke owned more land than anyone within 50 miles. People admired his intelligence. He always made difficult decisions quickly. His ranch was successful because he rarely made mistakes. But success had slowly filled his heart with pride. He believed money solved most problems. He believed power earned respect. And he believed emotions only made people weak. Very few dared to challenge him. The young woman lived a completely different life. She owned no large ranch. She had no famous family. Years earlier, she had lost the people she loved most. Since then, she had learned to depend only on herself. Her small farmhouse stood beside an old wooden barn whose roof needed repairs every winter. She repaired broken fences herself. She planted every crop with her own hands. She cared for injured animals. Whenever neighbors needed help, she quietly helped them without expecting anything in return. Some people admired her strength. Others whispered that she was too proud to accept anyone's help. Whenever she met the Duke at church, livestock sales, or town meetings, they often disagreed. The Duke questioned her decisions. She answered calmly, without fear. Unlike everyone else, she never tried to impress him. That puzzled him more than he wanted to admit. Winter slowly disappeared, and spring began warming the valley. One quiet morning, the young woman loaded firewood into her old wagon. She planned to sell it in town and buy seeds and lamp oil before sunset. The road was peaceful. Birds sang from nearby trees. Cold snow still rested beneath the shadows of tall hills. Suddenly, she noticed movement beside a broken fence. A young colt was trapped in twisted wire. The frightened horse kicked wildly, trying to escape. Without thinking about her own safety, she climbed down from the wagon. "It's all right," she whispered softly. Her gentle voice slowly calmed the terrified animal. Very carefully, she untangled the sharp wire from its leg. The colt had been badly injured. She tore a strip from her own sleeve and wrapped the wound tightly. "You're going to be all right," she smiled while gently rubbing its neck. Just then, the sound of galloping horses echoed across the valley. The Duke arrived with 2 ranch hands. "There he is," one of them shouted happily. The missing colt belonged to the Duke. They had searched all night. The Duke climbed off his horse and carefully examined the injured leg. The bandage was simple, but perfectly tied. "You handled this well," he admitted quietly. The young woman looked at him. It only needed someone willing to stop. Her words carried no anger, only truth. For a moment, the Duke had no answer. He reached into his pocket and offered her money. "Please, accept this." She smiled politely and shook her head. "I didn't help because I wanted payment." "You gave up your whole morning." "So would anyone with a kind heart." She climbed back into her wagon. With a small, respectful nod, she drove away without looking back. The Duke watched until she disappeared beyond a line of cottonwood trees. One ranch hand smiled. "I've never seen anyone refuse you like that." The Duke remained silent. For the first time in years, someone had treated him exactly like everyone else. By evening, the whole valley knew about the rescued colt. Every version of the story became larger than the last. People praised the young woman's kindness. Others talked about something even stranger. The Duke actually thanked someone in public. His elderly housekeeper heard the story before supper. While serving dinner, she quietly said, "Some people earn respect without asking for it." The Duke looked up. "What do you mean?" She smiled. "Today you met someone who cannot be bought, cannot be frightened, and cannot be flattered." The Duke didn't answer, but those words stayed in his mind long after dinner ended. That same evening, the young woman returned home. She fed her chickens, checked the horses, and closed the barn doors before sunset. As she walked toward her house, something caught her attention. Fresh hoofprints. They hadn't been there that morning. Someone had ridden all the way to her front porch. The tracks stopped near her door, waited, then turned around and disappeared. Nothing had been stolen, nothing was broken, but someone had clearly been watching her. That night she barely slept. Every sound outside made her open her eyes. The wind shook the wooden walls. An owl cried somewhere in the darkness. Once she thought she heard distant hoofbeats. By sunrise, she walked outside again. The hoofprints were still there. She followed them until they reached the main road where countless wagon wheels erased every clue. She returned home with an uneasy feeling she couldn't explain. Meanwhile, miles away, the Duke sat in an important ranch meeting. Normally, he settled every disagreement within minutes. Today, his attention kept drifting toward the distant hills. He remembered the young woman, her quiet confidence, her refusal to accept money, her gentle care for the injured colt. Without realizing it, she had become the first person in years who made him question himself. That afternoon, he rode alone to inspect damaged fences after the winter storms. His path unexpectedly passed near her farm. From a distance, he watched her lifting heavy fence posts by herself. The work was difficult, even for strong ranch hands. Still, she never complained. She simply took a deep breath and kept working. The Duke almost rode over to help. His horse even slowed. But after a long moment, he quietly turned away and rode home. He didn't understand why his heart suddenly felt so different. Yet somewhere deep inside, the proud man who had laughed at her outside the trading post was beginning to change. The following morning, the young woman tried to push the strange hoofprints out of her mind. It was too much work waiting. She repaired fences, fed her animals, and prepared vegetables and fresh butter to sell in town. But something felt different. As she walked through the market, people whispered when she passed. Some smiled warmly. Others stared with curious eyes. The story about the rescued colt had grown much larger than the truth. Before she finished shopping, a familiar voice stopped her. "I've been looking for you." She turned. The Duke stood only a few steps away. She raised an eyebrow. "That sounds unusual." "It is." He looked around. Curious townspeople were pretending to shop while secretly listening. "This isn't the right place." She nodded. Together they walked toward the old grain mill where very few people could hear them. The Duke spoke first. "Someone is causing trouble across the valley. Wagons are disappearing. Fences are being damaged. Horses are being released at night." She listened quietly. It's no longer a coincidence. For a moment she remained silent. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the folded letter she had received. "I think you should read this." The Duke unfolded it. His face became serious. "Stop helping the Duke, or the next warning won't be so gentle." He looked up immediately. "You should have shown me this sooner." "I wasn't helping you." "I know." "And why would someone write this?" The Duke slowly folded the paper. "Because someone wants us to believe we're enemies, or wants everyone else to believe we're working together." For the first time, neither of them argued. They simply looked at each other. Both realized they had become part of a dangerous game they never asked to join. "You won't face this alone anymore," the Duke said quietly. The young woman wanted to remind him that she had survived alone for years. But something in his voice had changed. The pride she once hated was slowly disappearing. She simply nodded. That evening, the Duke secretly ordered several trusted ranch hands to patrol the valley. "No fighting unless absolutely necessary," he warned. "Whoever is behind this is careful." Days passed. Instead of improving, the situation became worse. Another supply wagon disappeared. A small bridge was damaged during the night. Someone broke fences without stealing anything. Fear slowly spread across the valley. Neighbors who had trusted one another for years now looked at each other with suspicion. That was exactly what the unknown enemy wanted. Then came the annual church gathering. Every family in the valley attended. Children laughed while chasing each other across the open field. Old friends shared meals beneath large oak trees. Music filled the warm spring air. For a few hours, everyone forgot about the fear. As sunset painted the hills golden, the young woman walked toward the hitching rails to collect a basket she had left behind. Suddenly, she noticed a man slipping behind the church stable. At the exact same moment, the Duke saw him too. Without saying a single word, both began running. The stranger jumped onto a waiting horse and raced toward the narrow canyon trail. The Duke quickly mounted his horse. So did the young woman. Dust exploded beneath pounding hooves. The chase had begun. The mysterious rider knew the main trail, but the young woman knew something even better. She knew the hidden paths used by local farmers for years. Instead of following behind, she turned sharply toward a steep hillside. The Duke noticed her choice. Without hesitation, he trusted her. For the first time in his life, he followed someone else's judgment instead of his own. Minutes later, the narrow trails met inside a rocky clearing. The stranger pulled hard on his reins. His escape was over. The young woman blocked the path ahead. The Duke arrived from behind. There was nowhere left to run. Slowly, the rider climbed off his horse. The Duke stared in disbelief. You. It was his wealthy, neighboring landowner. The same man who had competed against him for years. The rival lowered his head. If the valley stops trusting you, he admitted, your business would fall apart. His eyes shifted toward the young woman. And if people blamed her, both of you would lose everything. You nearly destroyed innocent families, the young woman said sadly. The man looked away. He had no excuse. The next morning, the truth spread across the valley faster than any rumor before. The missing wagons were found, hidden inside abandoned storage buildings. The stolen tools used to break fences were discovered nearby. Every piece of evidence pointed toward the rival rancher. The entire valley realized they had all been victims of one cruel plan. Instead of allowing fear to divide them, neighbors came together. Broken fences were repaired. Damaged bridges were rebuilt. Recovered seeds were delivered to struggling families before planting season. The valley became stronger than ever. A few days later, everyone gathered outside the trading post, the exact same place where the Duke had mocked the young woman months before. This time, everything was different. The Duke slowly removed his black hat. The busy street became completely silent. He looked directly at the young woman. I owe you more than an apology. His voice carried no pride, only honesty. I judged your strength before I understood your heart. He paused. I believed wealth made a person important. Another pause. You showed me that kindness, courage, and honesty matter far more. Not a single person moved. Then the Duke spoke 3 words nobody ever expected to hear. I was wrong. Those words shocked the valley more than anything else that had happened that year. The young woman smiled gently. It takes real strength to admit that. The Duke smiled back. For the first time, not as the richest man in the valley, simply as a man. After that day, they spent more time working together than arguing. They repaired storm damage, helped elderly farmers, delivered food to struggling families, built fences together, worked side by side from sunrise until sunset. The Duke slowly discovered happiness in serving others instead of proving himself. The young woman slowly realized that not every proud heart remained proud forever. Trust replaced doubt. Friendship slowly became love. Not because of grand promises, but because of countless small acts of kindness. Spring finally covered the valley with green grass and colorful wildflowers. One beautiful afternoon, the Duke invited the entire town beneath the giant oak trees. Nobody knew the reason. Families gathered. Children played nearby. Church bells echoed softly across the valley. The Duke stepped forward. Then he looked at the young woman. Months earlier, he had laughed at her in front of everyone. Today, he reached into his pocket and removed a simple silver ring. "This valley once heard me speak words filled with pride," he smiled warmly. "Today, I hope it hears words filled with love." He walked toward her. Every heartbeat in the crowd seemed to stop. He knelt on one knee. "Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes. She remembered the lonely years, the hardships, the insults, the rescued colt, the long chase, the apology that had changed everything. A smile slowly appeared across her face. "Yes." The crowd erupted into cheers. Church bells rang loudly. Children laughed. Neighbors embraced one another. Even the oldest ranchers wiped tears from their eyes. People remembered the story for many years, not because the richest man married a poor woman, but because they witnessed something much rarer. They watched pride become humility. They watched respect become friendship. They watched friendship become love. And every spring, when wildflowers covered the valley once again, people smiled as they remembered the day the Duke laughed at the quiet young woman, and how, before another spring had fully arrived, she proudly wore his wedding ring. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way till the end. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and share it with your friends. It really helps us a lot. If you want to watch more exciting stories like this, don't forget to subscribe our page right now. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is right now? And if this story touched your heart, please send some stars. Every single star gives us huge motivation to keep creating more amazing videos for you. See you in the next story. Take care of you, friends.